This is a revision presentation for the short-run Phillips curve. The most important thing when considering the Phillips curve is actually when not to use it in answers. We actually tend to see that students probably use the Phillips curve too often rather than too little. So let me make clear the circumstances in which the Phillips curve is a useful thing to include in an exam answer. Firstly, if you were writing on the consequences of unemployment, Phillips curve is a useful concept to use to show the effect on the rate of inflation. And then for the same reason, if you were writing an essay on potential macroeconomic trade-offs between different objectives, which has been a recent topic for exam essays, you might, for example, use the Phillips curve to illustrate the idea that either low unemployment or high output would create above target inflation. So why does this relationship exist? Well, the causal chains that lie behind this relationship work both from thinking about low unemployment and from high unemployment. Starting off, if we have very low unemployment, well, now that we have fewer workers unemployed, we have less competition between workers for the available jobs. You can think of here of workers being quite confident. There's a low rate of unemployment, so actually they feel quite confident about going to, for example, their firms and demanding higher wages. And for each available job now, there's fewer people for the firm to pick from who are unemployed. All this results in the firms having to pay high wages to their workers. And then we just simply need to think about how this affects the cost of production for the firms. Now they have to pay higher wages, actually it increases their costs, therefore they increase their prices, and so we get more wage inflation. Now this works exactly the same way, if the other way round, when we're thinking about the consequences of having high unemployment. So if we have more workers unemployed, we're now going to have lots of competition for any available job, lots of workers desperate for work that are now applying for the same job. And this puts the firms in a useful position. Because they know that so many people are desperate and looking for jobs, they will actually then only offer lower wages. The workers here know that if they don't accept the lower wages here, they might not get a job at all, and that makes them more willing to accept that lower rate of pay. And again, this reduces the cost of production for the firms, and the lower cost of production means that they're likely to reduce their prices. We get a fall in the overall price level, and now we end up with less inflation, less wage inflation. So they're the causal chains that are lying behind the trade-off between unemployment and inflation. When we represent this trade-off instead in diagram form, again we're thinking about the same two indicators, wage inflation, or perhaps the overall rate of inflation in the economy, and the rate of unemployment. And the question then becomes, how do we expect inflation to change as unemployment changes? So we think, what happens as the rate of unemployment gets lower? Well, actually, as we just discussed, what we'd expect is to start to see higher inflation because of the effect through wages, through competition, or in this case, the lack of competition in the labour market. Firms now start paying high wages, and we move towards the higher rate of inflation. When we put this principle together, we end up with our familiar-looking short-run Phillips curve.